Hello everyone, Void here, coming back at you all with another top 10 video. We're gonna go kinda retro here. Back in 2011, we had the first Commander products released. And it's kind of funny too, because we see all these other formats, they're very hit or miss. Commander has lasted a long time, and even before the products, it was still a growing format. It was still something I think people wanted to play. But we've had other things like Tiny Leaders, Oathbreaker. Is there anything that's going to replace Commander? Is there anything that's going to give it a run for its money? And it doesn't look like it. So I think it's appropriate to go back to 2011 to rank the top 10 cards from this set. And I love this set. I do. I think the Commanders are some of the best ever printed. Power level might vary. I think every single year it's all about making brand new Commander options that are bigger and better than the ones before. So yes, the power level from these Commanders specifically, it's going to be a lot lower, but I still love them. There's like a nostalgia factor here that we have to consider. This is back before, there were only two Commander sets where you had the older borders for the modern era. It's hard to believe, but yeah, it's been 9 years since we had these products. And they're still expensive. If you want to get one of these decks brand new, good luck. Not only are they going to be harder to find because of the low print run, but you can expect to pay a lot more for them, maybe $200 for a decent one. And I'm not even going to say the decks themselves are that great. You have some good reprints in here like Path to Exile. But if you look at the deck Heavenly Inferno, for example, it's not a very strong deck on its own. Precons have been a lot better recently. Like out of the box, you could actually just play this as a deck, and you don't have to worry about a lack of synergy. Like, why the hell is Dread Cacodemon in the Kalia deck when it has a trigger that specifically says if you play it from your hand? It's like certain things like that they didn't really think through. They just wanted to make a new card, regardless of whether or not it synergized with their commander. So let's start it off here with number 10, Champion's Helm. Now this is a forgotten equipment, but I still think it is fantastic. By the way, all of the cards on this list are going to be cards that were released with Commander 2011, no reprints. That's kind of how I do top 10s and reprint sets. So it has to be a unique card from this set. It could be reprinted afterwards, of course, but it has to be originally from this one. But Champion's Helm, it's a worse Swiftfoot Boots, but you could tell it was intended for Commander because it gives the equipped creature hexproof if it's legendary. The equip cost is appropriate, 1 mana to do that, and it gives the equipped creature +2/+2, which I think is still fantastic. Now, would I want haste instead of the +2/+2? I think that depends on the size of your legendary creature or your commander. However, hexproof is still going to be valuable no matter how much you have to pay to get it onto your creature. I think the cost is still appropriate. And yes, the hexproof is specific to certain creatures, not all of your creatures, so it's not going to be as good as Swiftfoot Boots or Lightning Greaves, where they can give hexproof or shroud to any creature you equip it to. That's the main thing working against it, but again, you get a +2/+2, so it is a little bit different. Number 9 is Collective Voyage. Now, Join Forces was the specific mechanic from this set in 2011. Like every Commander year, you get something unique to that year that was never introduced before. And Join Forces is a multiplayer specific card too, because it requires all of your opponents to pay a certain amount of mana, if they want to, of course. Collective Voyage is probably the best one, because it deals with lands and it's only 1 mana for you to play. Everything else is optional. You don't have to pay a certain amount of mana extra. Just every player is going to search for that many basics. It's fantastic in, of course, land decks, where just having a ton of land drops is beneficial to you. But it's also good for group hug decks, where you're gifting everybody lands. Number 8 is Edric, Spymaster of Trest, originally from the first Commander set here. And Coastal Piracy is powerful on a Commander. It's even more powerful when you're rewarding players for attacking your other opponents instead of just attacking you. So you're making deals, you're getting yourself card draw pretty easily if you have unblockable creatures. That's kind of where you want Coastal Piracy abilities anyway. Maybe not as powerful as he used to be, but still something I recommend if you need that extra card draw. If you're playing a combat deck and you're in these colors, go for it. Number 7 is Carador Ghost Chieftain. This was Marin before Marin, and arguably worse. But you do get white to play with, so you get stuff like Karmic Guide. You're just playing a graveyard deck in those colors. It's incredibly powerful, even if you can only do it once a turn to cast a creature from your graveyard. Main downside about Carador is that he is incredibly expensive if you don't have the cost reduction, but if you do, get him out there, play your creature from the graveyard. It could be something as little as Sakura Tribe Elder. You know, because little creatures like that can just keep dying, going to the graveyard, it's beneficial to this kind of deck. And although Carador isn't my favorite graveyard commander, like early on, he was pretty darn good. Number 6 is Gabe, Guru of Spores. From this deck specifically, Gabe is my favorite commander. You of course have the powerful combos with Doubling Season, Ashnod's Altar, anything that can double counters, anything that can double tokens, getting you that extra mana, in addition to whatever else you have, maybe like a Blood Artist, Altar of Dementia, some kind of win con you can benefit from by getting infinite creatures, infinite death triggers. Big draw here though is being one of the first decent +1/+1 counter commanders. You could, of course, experiment with other strategies. It doesn't just have to be about the +1/+1 counters. Another popular strategy to go with for him is Saprolings, and you could have Fungus Tribal, where your whole goal is to just make more Saproling tokens. It's a fun deck, and even though he hasn't quite seen a lot of play lately, maybe not one of the more powerful commander options anymore, you could say that for just about any commander on this list. Number 5 is the Mimeoplasm. I think the Mimeoplasm has aged well. The whole purpose of the deck is to focus on graveyards in general. It could be your own graveyard, it could be your opponent's graveyard. There's never going to be a shortage of powerful creatures. It seems like if it's a decent creature with Insulti colors, you can expect to see it in every new set. It could be a creature with a good ability, maybe a hexproof creature. It could just be a good creature with large power and toughness. That way you get more +1/+1 counters on it. Very interesting Reanimator deck, where you could of course just make some kind of Frankenstein creature where you're stitching two creatures together. Probably my favorite designed card from 2011. May not be the most powerful anymore, but still one that I think holds up well today. If you want to make a Mimeoplasm deck, I will say if there is a commander that has aged well from 2011, it's definitely the Mimeoplasm. So number 4 is Kalia of the Vast. Holy cow, was this one of the more powerful commanders for a while there. I think everybody knows about the Master of Cruelties combo where you just cheated into play. It's already tapped and attacking a player. By doing that, you can easily just kill them, because if they're set to 1, then Kalia damage will do it. There's some pretty deadly interactions in here, and there's no shortage of powerful angels, demons, and dragons that you can punish your opponents with. The problem with Kalia is that she is one of the most telegraphed commanders. Once you deal with her, you don't really have to worry about much, which is why a lot of people just gang up on the Kalia deck, because they understand that as long as they keep her off the board, they have nothing to worry about looking in your direction. It's okay if you can hard cast an Avacyn Angel of Hope. It's okay if you hard cast an Iona. It's easier to deal with them normally later in the game than to deal with them on turn 5 or 6 when you can just cheat them into play, in addition to doing whatever else with your mana because you didn't pay mana to play them. They're just cheated into play. So, although she has one of the more powerful abilities, the deck is incredibly easy to stop. And this isn't your typical dies to removal argument. This is, without your commander, your deck doesn't really do anything well argument. But still, just a cool commander. I mean, flavor-wise, the artwork is amazing. You have the synergy of dealing with 3 tribes instead of just 1, which seems to be the status quo. That you get to deal with 3 is just way cooler. Number 3 is Anamar, Soul of Elements. If I had to rank in terms of power, I think Anamar is the most powerful commander from this whole set, but also one I would say is one of the more boring ones. The abilities don't really interest me, however, you could still play Anamar effectively, and I think there's still newer support. Making your creatures cheaper is never going to be a bad thing. It's just not something super interactive. Another thing Anamar has going for it is the fact that you have protection from black and white, the 2 best colors for removal in the whole game. So all the kill spells, all the Path to Exiles, they're not going to work, making it one of the biggest pains to deal with. This in addition to also being an elemental, so if you want to work an elemental synergy in there, you could. But earlier on, from 2011 to maybe 2015, it just seemed like there were a few decks. We could lump Aloro in there, but you had Kalia, you had Anamar, you had Gabe, Guru of Spores, you had the fun Mimeoplasm decks, but it was quite clear that Anamar was just way too good. The protection was just an added benefit. I think a lot of us can agree. Maybe something it didn't need. You could have added some other ability, but giving it Pro Black and Pro White, that just made it one of the best commanders easily. And then number 2 is Chaos Warp. You might not know, but one of the best removal spells in the format was introduced in Commander 2011. And Red has a problem with precision that I think Chaos Warp helped address. You can deal with any permanent, so you can deal with a land, you can deal with an enchantment, which is something that Red doesn't typically do well, but just the versatility of dealing with multiple permanents, any kind of problem, makes this one of the best cards in Commander, period. Yes, your opponents could get the free card off the top, and it could be something even worse, a bigger problem that you're going to have to deal with, but I think what you're using it on is going to be a significant problem. You're going to roll the dice, and chances are they just get a basic land or something that's not going to cause you any more pain. It's why in Mono Red, you can't really get much better than this. We haven't really seen a better targeted removal spell in Mono Red. It's also just a good spell in general. If you don't really have a lot of removal and you're in multicolors, why not? It's still going to be good. Now, before we get to number 1, we have honorable mentions. I think Zedru the Great-Hearted and the whole Political Puppets Commander deck from the year, while it was fun for the time, I just don't really see it having a place in current year 2020 with all the other good commanders. All the weird cards that you could give to your opponents that punish them, keeping them from playing lands, keeping them from playing creatures. You just don't see a lot of those printed anymore. The strategy is so specific, it's very rare when you get new support. Every other commander I've showed you so far has seen more support. You can make bigger, better decks with them in 2020. With Zedru, I think that's just becoming increasingly harder to do. Damia's Age of Stone, I think Sultai Control. It was fantastic with her. You could keep a full hand, but as I mentioned in my top 10 Forgotten Commanders video, there are better things now. You have Tassiger, so if you want to play Sultai Control, it's kind of like, why would you play an objectively worse commander? And it's a mana cost that you have to pay. There's no Delve to cheat her in there. And then, of course, Vishkal, Blood Arbiter, another one that I think is a top 10 Forgotten Commander option, but one that is still pretty cool to build around if you like +1/+1 counters, removal, sacrifice strategies, lifelink strategies, vampire strategies even. Pretty cool option. Maybe a little bit pricey for the commander cost, but other than that, can't go wrong. But number 1 is Acorn Catapult. This is not a joke. I mean, Acorn Catapult can give anybody a squirrel. No, it is a joke. Number 1 is Command Tower. I think we all saw this coming, originally from the first Commander product, obviously. But if you don't have good mana, you can't do anything. That means the rest of the cards on this list are useless if you don't get the specific mana you're looking for, and because you get all of the colors in your commander's color identity, it means you can play pretty much anything else in your deck. Color identity just pretty much means if it has the colors on the card, it could be in its cost, it could be an ability that it has, it's going to tap for that mana, so very hard to pass up on this card if you're playing more than one color. Obviously, monocolor decks can give this card the finger and not look back. But if you're playing at least 2, there's no reason why you wouldn't want to play it. While it's not searchable in the same way that a dual land is, effectively it's going to give you the same value. It's not a shock land, it doesn't deal you any damage, it doesn't come into play tapped at all. This was a brand new card that they created just for commander players to have better mana. So, without a doubt, I think a lot of us saw this coming. It was going to be high on my list. It was either this or Chaos Warp. I just think they're 2 of the best cards from the whole set. But anyway, you all have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next time.